What's up guys, Matt with BleepinJeep.com here. Today things are getting serious with the Scorpion Crawler project. I know most of you aren't ever going to do anything this serious, so that got me thinking, what can I show you that you can learn from this? So I haven't done the opposite side yet, and I figured what I can show you is how to replace your rockers before I tear them completely off. So stay tuned, we're going to replace the rockers on that side of the Jeep in this episode.
Lost your American wings. Are you a patriot or another brain-dead citizen?
Alright, so here is the stock side minus a few parts. Now the first thing I'd like to talk about is why you would replace your rockers. There's several reasons, and one of those is if you live up north, they're probably completely rusted out. Number two is a lot of times people will put sliders on here, rock sliders. The rock sliders sit down probably 2 to 4 inches below your rockers. That gives you less ground clearance. Now if you haven't had sliders, rock sliders before, and you go off-road, then you're going to hit a rock right here and it's going to crush it in. So that could be one reason that you want to replace this, is because it's already crushed in. And another reason is if you incorporate these as rock sliders, so you cut this out, replace them with the rock sliders, you can save that 2 to 4 inches of ground clearance right here by replacing that with thicker steel, and this basically becomes your rock slider. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to replace this with a 2x6 1/4-inch piece of steel. This is like a rectangular square tubing steel. So the first thing that we're going to do is draw a line right here along this edge. You don't really have to draw it, but this marker's not working. Anyway, we're going to cut right here along this edge. Now some people put their rockers up higher. You could cut along this edge, but the problem with that is your doors come in and sit right here. So if you did put your rocker that high, you would have to cut your doors or not have any doors, which, I mean, you can do whatever. But if you put it at or below this line right here, you can still keep your current doors. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut right here. After that, we're going to cut up underneath here somewhere. I'll show you that here in a minute. And then we'll just replace that with a 2x6 piece of steel. So to cut this, we're just going to use a good quality thin cutting wheel on an angle grinder here. Just going to cut straight in. Okay, so when you get to the edges here, we're just going to continue drawing that straight line all the way out and then around. I would recommend using some kind of a level, or you can just eyeball it, whatever. I don't have the fenders anymore, so I'm not exactly sure how that would affect things, but I would assume that you would just cut straight through the fender and all the way out until you got through the fender. And now let's take a look down here. I'll show you what we're going to do down here. So now we're looking up from the bottom here, and there's several ways you can do this. I'm not exactly sure how everyone else does it, but I can show you what I would do. I think it really depends on how wide your piece is that you're going to weld into here. I've got a piece of 2x6. So I've heard of people using 2x4, 2x6, or 2x8. It really depends on how far you want that rocker to stick out past your door and guard, hit the trees. The further you get it out there, the more it's going to protect your body against the trees and whatnot. And you can also weld tube down to it if you get it out there far enough. So you could cut it right here on the inside of the pinch seam, weld the pinch seam to it, but I'm thinking the best way would be to cut it right here, maybe even a little further out, right there. That way we can smack that down with the hammer, have something to weld to. So I'm just going to draw a line right about here. We'll cut all that off, meet it at the edges here with where we started earlier. Cut all that out, drop this down, stick in our 2x6. Okay, now save this part for last so you don't get struck in the face. You can see this is where I came out from the underside. So I'm just going to continue straight up, then I'll continue straight across, make a 90-degree angle right there. There it is. So if you'll notice, we've got a little bit of an edge there. You can tell by the shadow that this is sticking out a little further than the wall here. Now I did that for a reason, and that is so we would have something to weld to. Otherwise you would just have to try and weld it to that corner. So what I'm going to do now is try to take a hammer or something and bend that down. That way it'll sit flat against this wall, the new square tubing will, and then we'll have a perfect spot to weld that to. Alright, I bent the whole thing down all the way across. Now since I did that, I need to accommodate by taking off that corner right there because it sits back a little further now. I'll need to do that on the front side and the back side. Alright, there's only one more issue that I can see, and that is right here where the seat belt bolts to the bottom here. There is a square nut right there, and it's just barely in the way, but it is in the way. When we put that, let's pretend this is the square tubing that's going in here, it's not going to seat right because it's hitting the bottom of that nut. So I can clearance it just a little bit. It only needs about a 1/4 inch or so. I can just cut the bottom of that nut a little bit up higher, or what I could do is just cut a hole in the square tubing, whichever one is easier for you. I think it'll be easier just to cut a little bit off the bottom of that nut there. I think that'll do it. Alright, let's shove it in and test fit. Now this is a 2x6, like I said, it's 1/4 inch. You can buy this by the foot at your local metal supply, or you can buy a 20-foot stick of it. I've got it 78 inches so that we'll have extra room on the sides to figure out how we want to cut it, maybe at an angle or something like that. Whoa! Whoa! Like a circus balancing act. Okay, check it out. It's a beautiful fit up here, but I can see now why most people go with the 2x8. That's because once you get your doors closed here, the doors are going to sit right here. The rocker is actually only sticking out probably 1.5 inches. So if you went with another 2 inches, that would give you a lot more protection from the trees and stuff. So 2x6 is only about 1.5 inches past the door, so keep that in mind. If you wanted to put a roll cage or something and come over, it'd be really hard to attach that roll cage because there's not enough sticking out there. But in my case, I'm going to get rid of all this, so it's going to work for me, but just keep that in mind when you're building your own. Also, keep in mind that if you're going to be pounding on the rocks with these things, you're going to want to get 1/4 inch, and you're going to want to tie it into the frame somehow. Let's take a look underneath. So down here I see a bit of a mistake that I made earlier, and that was, you'll remember I pounded all these out with the hammer. Now looking at it, I don't think I needed to do that, because now I'm going to have to come back and pound it all back pretty much to where it was. So the reason for that is, I'm not quite sure, but it's not going all the way over to the edge. So if I did this again, I probably wouldn't pound that out with the hammer, but it's not a big deal. All I have to do is whack it back until it contacts the rocker here, the new rocker, and then we'll weld this along with the top edge. Now I'm not actually going to weld this up because, like I said, this isn't my plan for this Jeep, but if it was, what I would want to do is come in here with some square tubing like this, make a huge angle on this end, and match the angle here, and give that some bracing. If you're going to be pounding on the rocks on this, it might hold up, but I wouldn't trust it to hold up, because right now, if we just welded it like this, there's nothing but sheet metal holding this whole thing in. Now what you could also do is come in with a solid plate of steel and go all the way across this thing like this. I think that might hold up as well. And then if you were to build an exoskeleton, having some tubes come in from the top and hold it down into position would reinforce it too. Okay guys, well that's where this video ends. I hope you learned something though. Make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe. And please go to the website and buy one of these t-shirts. That's what helps support this channel. So you can find that at BleepinJeep.com/store. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.